This is a reenactment of the board presentation done for the Worthington City School District Board of Education on February 12th. It will give me a chance to make one correction that I made a mistake on last Monday night, and that was when asked about LEED certification. I said we were designing to very high sustainability standards, but we weren't going after the LEED credential. That is in fact incorrect. We are still registered with the Green Building Council, and we're well into the LEED Silver points at this point, and I suppose there's a chance we reach gold at some point. So I wanted to make that correction. So the point of the presentation, this presentation, is to focus on the Thomas Worthington project. And there's three areas we want to cover, and I'll be sharing a little time with Assistant Superintendent Randy Banks, who's going to talk about one of these three things. I'm going to do a phasing timeline review. He's going to do an impact and operations review, and then I'm going to do a design review summary. So we're a little out of order, but we are on track. So the existing Thomas Worthington site was quite an impressive development of many assets over many years. And one of the ideas was to keep as many of the site assets as possible while upgrading and replacing most of the buildings. So one of the advantages we saw early on was this, over time, over many years, that Thomas Worthington High School had grown many times east to west. And in fact, we were over 850 feet east to west with the existing high school. Our new design gave us the opportunity to take advantage of a smaller footprint and gain even some additional site amenities, some additional parking, some additional access drives. We are completely circumventing the school now with access and parking and safe routes to school in terms of pedestrians and buses. So we took some time in the early design to actually map out some of the site circulation pathways. So there are pathways for parents, there are pathways for students, there are pathways for buses, there are pathways for visitors doing just visiting or dropping off. So we had the opportunity to look at ways to make that better. It is not a perfect system given some of our initial constraints, but it is vastly improved over the existing Thomas. We also then got into a conversation with the city about a multimodal path along 161. And so we've worked with the city on some options for that. And the one option that looks like it's going forward with us now is the one that has a meandering path, but stays close to 161, but stays just far enough away that it's a safe pedestrian and biking path for this multimodal trail. The schedule has been quite impressive. I'm here to report that I used this same diagram in March of 2003, 11 months ago, to illustrate the schedule for the Thomas projects. And it is still completely on schedule, which is a great thing to say. A year later, a schedule is still looking like it was supposed to unfurl. A lot of credit to Risley Construction, who's managing the timeline and the construction of the project. But here we are in February of 2024, and we're right where we were supposed to be in terms of the work that we're doing. One of the big challenges and one of the big challenges posed to us by students and teachers was show us how we're going to have high school here for the next few years. And so it's gotten even a little more simpler as we've gone through it. This first slide shows the area of the existing Thomas that we had to take down surgically to start the new construction in the first phase. So we lost the media center wing, we lost the classrooms that surround that wing. And again, we put up some modulars and we came up with a very creative plan of how classrooms would be used. And that allows us to do what we call phase one, which is the new turquoise space. It is the new classroom wing, 3-story of academic classrooms. And it will be completed in its entirety in this phase. And so right away, students next school year, will be moving into brand new academic space. And so we're glad about that. So the loss of some of that first phase space was offset by the fact that we're gaining lots of new space for them to occupy. The second phase becomes even a little harder because we take out some of the core spaces of the building. We're taking out the connector, the main original entry of the Thomas High School. We're taking out the fine arts wing, and we're nudging into technical space and kitchen space. So we have recognized that kitchen space is something that when it goes offline, there has to be a plan in place. So we're working with the district to talk about how to satellite food. We'll still have a serving area. We'll still have a cafeteria, but we'll be bringing the hot food to the site by means of a satellite service from some other school in the district. So we're working on how that happens. By doing that, we are able to get the entire rest of the building footprint, the new building footprint, completed. So our earliest plan was just to get the center core area, the cafeteria, the kitchen, and the administration area done. But our new plan allows us now to get the entire fine arts wing done, as well as, and this was the key, the central mechanical room and the central power place of the building. So opportunity now is we're going to see new building come in 2 phases, and we will be 100%. That last western area of the high school then will be our last phase to demolish that. But that becomes very important swing space and temporary space as we finish the stuff you see in turquoise now. As we take away some of the throughways and some of the connections for the current school, we had to also map out with the district, completely accessible routes to get from one end of the building to the other. And this is where Randy Banks is going to take over from here and talk a bit about how we're getting some of the transition done in these phases.
I'm going to talk about the impact on our community and our students in just 5 slides. So if you will, stick with me here. This slide shows you what school will be like for students next year. The red line would be how a typical student would enter the west end of the current building, come through the auxiliary gymnasium. Notice that they're hugging the wall there because 2 of those courts could be impacted with music classrooms. So the music classrooms are now gone in that big void in the middle of the screen. Those will be relocated to the aux gym, and students coming from that west end would have to cut through the aux gym through a set of double doors into our new building. They could then cross through the new academic building, and if they happen to have class in the old building, there would be 2 ways for students to kind of transition into the old building or perhaps go to the cafeteria. And one would be by heading north. This again is outside of the building. They would head north and they would be able to connect to that building. There would also be in blue there a set of stairs depending on the direction that you're going to go. So we do want you to know that with every construction project, there are times when there's inconveniences. We started that by having teams without locker rooms at the field house. We now have band that's been practicing behind the school instead of their traditional spot. We have a wrestling team that's been practicing on the 2nd story of the auditorium. And as we begin this phase, there's going to be groups that are going to be impacted as well. An important thing to note, however, is that most of our teachers will be in their final permanent assignment once this building opens up. So that's good news for staff. It's good news for students because they will be located where they will be when the entire project is done. For most of them, there won't be a double move. So we think that's a positive. Going back to this chart, you'll see a green line. Those green line mark entrances for students on the front of the building. Talking with Principal Scully, it's his intention to have students either come in the west end, especially if their parents are dropping them off, but also some bus riders could continue to come in the west end like they do now. But the main entrance of the school will also be open. So it's important to note that they could travel along the front of the school on the sidewalk and come into the main entrance if they would like. Obviously, theater, band, and the arts are going to be impacted the most. Those classrooms will be reassigned to other places in the building. I kind of covered that music piece. If you can envision that aux gym, they're going to build temporary walls in that aux gym. They're going to use their current locker or music storage that will be brought in that will serve as a wall for that space so that instruments can be secure. And we'll make sure that the arts have the best possible space that they can have under those conditions. There will be some limited use of the 2nd story of the old building. So the part on the far east side closest to Evening Street, we are going to have to use some of those classrooms. This creates some accessibility challenges, and therefore we are going to install a lift that will be installed on the southeast corner of that building so that upstairs is accessible, because there will no longer be access through the old elevator, and the new elevator will be in the new building and won't be connected to the part that we're tearing down. So we want you to know that there will be some challenges with traffic. It's only for this year, and then we think that a lot of that's corrected. But the team at Thomas Worthington, along with many of the people represented here tonight, have worked especially hard to make sure that they are eliminating as many obstacles as possible. Mike mentioned no kitchen. This certainly will have an impact on students. We are working with our food service team to make sure that many varieties and options will still be prepared at another location. We will have food storage, so there will be supplies and things that can be stored despite the lack of a kitchen, but they still will have an eating area. So food will still be served at Thomas. They will still have room to eat and spread out, but the food will actually be prepared at another location and brought in daily. Again, that's a one-year problem, and we think that they are well on their way to coming up with some solutions that will work. And a site, obviously this involves staff as well. They'll need to be relocated and maybe divided so that they can begin preparing the food. On a positive note, before I leave this slide, Mr. Gehring's been doing battle with the Thomas Worthington basement for many, many years. And in this picture, you can see that that basement's gone. So we just have one spring season to get through. This next slide, there's a little blue, and Mike mentioned this, but there's a little blue rectangle at the northwest corner of this. A lot of work went into that very little space, but they switched the power supply. That's already done. And then I just used this slide to highlight those 2 pinch points. So when you have this many students traveling, it's important, and Pete's well aware of this. He plans to have our hallway monitors kind of stationed at these areas, but you could potentially have a few traffic jams at certain times of the day based on traffic flow from students traveling from the academic building for an elective in the gymnasium, or the other way if you have students coming from the cafeteria back to the main academic building. It's important to note that. I will also mention that we're going to have to relocate the clinic. That will go into the old building, and that will have access to the parking lot in case a parent needs to pick up their child. Student services like counseling and mental health specialists will be relocated to that area as well. And our principal offices, they will be spread throughout the old building and the new academic building, taking advantage of some small conference rooms so that we would still have Molly in the academic wing, Molly would be in the athletic wing, administrators would be in the academic wing, and then in the old building, there would also be administrators stationed there. So they'll be spread out as well. Again, just for that 1 year, and then their offices will be complete. Moving to the next slide, this one was just put in to illustrate how complicated this puzzle is. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. However, I would like to highlight 2 things. I'd like to first highlight the fact that you can see that memorial walkway that we talked a lot about during the design that connects the west end of Thomas Worthington to our stadium. It serves as a safe way for students to navigate that parking lot. It also serves as a way to divide the parking lot for buses and parents and keep that center open, and another way to recognize students who have passed away, and having trees and memorial stones throughout the property will all be condensed to that one area where they can be properly recognized. So we're excited about that feature, which will be now done in 2025. It will not impact this summer. The other piece I want to point out is on that front driveway. When Mike shows you the pictures of Thomas Worthington, you'll see this beautiful drive that goes east to west. But I want to point out that blue section. In next year, it will be paved in front of the school until you get to that blue section. That will be a gravel road because there will be a lot of construction traffic that will travel over that gravel road. So while it will be open for visitors to come in and park in the parallel parking in front of the new building, when they exit towards Evening Street behind the MAC, they will need to take advantage of that gravel road, and it won't be paved until the following year. So that's highlighted in blue. Certainly will have impact on visitors to our school, but we don't think that will change their traffic pattern at all. This next slide has a lot happening here. The first thing that I'd like to point out is the back of the building will be closed. They will use that as a laydown area for construction on Thomas Worthington, contractor parking. You will no longer be able to cut through the back of the property from Evening Street to the student parking lot like many in the community do. We will also lose over 100 staff parking spaces in the back, which creates a little bit of a challenge. Moving to the left, you will see that the student parking lot will remain in blue. It's probable that we'll designate some of those spots as staff parking as well, just to make sure that we're covering ourselves for days that we have substitute teachers, traveling teachers, but it's probable that that will occur. And we've had a lot of conversation about the laydown area for the natatorium. Because that's a separate project, they'll need a separate area, a separate trailer. At this point, we've landed on that north section, trying to keep it out of the way and in the less desirable parking spaces. So they will fence that area in red, and that will be their laydown area for the pool project, which means there will be times throughout the project where equipment needs to go from that area in front of our stadium down to that natatorium that you can see down in the southwest corner of the property. We're going to lose that hill. So if you've been to the pool on fireworks night and enjoyed the view from the hill, that hill will be gone next year. That will be fenced in, and they'll begin work on the natatorium in that area. And then finally, working our way counterclockwise to the front of Thomas Worthington, I just want to point out two features that we have currently in the plans. There's a gray square there, which at this point is designated as the temporary band practice field. At this point, the field is gravel. It will be compacted, and it's going to be designed similar to that of what they're using in Gahanna. So I talked with Principal Scully today, and our band directors were on their way to Gahanna to inspect that, just to make sure that it meets their standards and it will meet their needs for next year. That parking lot then could also be used as emergency parking for larger events at our school. In orange, you'll see a second lot. That lot would be designated as staff parking. And if I went back to the other slide, this allows our teachers to park in front of the building, again, temporarily. That too, at this point, would be a gravel lot. And they would exit the building by moving east on the one-way path in front of the school. So in regards to parking, and then I'm sure you'll have questions when we get to the end, I just want to say that we are going to lose some parking. So I mentioned over 100 spots in the back. I think currently if you use that band practice area as well as the orange area, we would gain more than we lose. But then when you count the laydown area in the student lot, they're probably down just a few spots. But what that means is we're going to have to plan a little better so that we don't have conflicts. We're probably not going to be able to house 3 events on that property at the same time like we oftentimes do. Some of our events that are larger may need to be scaled down during this period. Some of our users that take advantage of renting our space at Thomas Worthington during the next year and a half may not be able to take advantage of that based on the challenges that are presented here. But we wanted you to know that it will impact our community. We're hopeful we'll still be able to successfully operate a swimming pool and the operation there, as well as all of our summer events. But it certainly will look different for the upcoming year. And then this last slide just gives you an idea of what the traffic flow will look like. So I'll start with the purple line. This would be the line that visitors who are just coming to the school for a meeting or dropping something off that is not during arrival or departure time. So we don't want them competing with school buses in that loop. But that would be an available option where they could park in a parallel spot, run in the school, have a quick meeting, drop something off, meet with the teacher, and then exit onto Evening Street. In red would be our bus areas or options. You notice we have 2 areas for buses, and that's currently how we run the buses. That would remain unchanged. And then in green, you will notice the parent loop no longer goes to the back of the building. We feel like, again, we're going to have to designate some teacher spots, but this still provides a long enough loop that we're going to be able to get cars off of 161 and kind of retrain parents to follow. And then hopefully they won't cut that corner into the student lot. We have some strategies to kind of keep them flowing. They'll go around that laydown area and then exit out the athletic entrance. So again, traffic flow will be impacted. We'll be able to probably live with this for most of 2 years until the baseball field and the softball field are complete in the back. But we wanted you to know that will impact people in the morning and the afternoon when it comes to school. So with that, I'm going to let Mike kind of go through the slides so you get to see what Thomas Worthington's going to look like, and then I'll be back to answer any questions that you might have.
So picking up now on the design review of the Thomas project, back from early concept stage all the way through what's actually getting built today, we're looking at an overall view from over 161 to the front facade of Thomas. Again, a much more compact footprint, a much more energy efficient envelope, and a building that I hope serves all the needs of the Thomas students for the next 50 years. The design obviously is in a context of the city of Worthington, in the context of an architectural review board, and in context of an architectural style that is a bit of neoclassical, early American, Thomas Jefferson type of architecture. We worked very closely with the ARB. They were involved from the very beginning, our earliest concepts, and helped us, move through revisions and details that I think made a great statement. I think we have very consistent and very accurate architecture represented now. And as you drive by the current site, you see that's actually becoming reality now. This is the cavity wall concrete block that is creating the main structure of the building. And you can start to see the architectural scale and the architectural detail starting to be formed in terms of the massing. And later on, as we add the brick and the trim, we'll start to see the architecture become final. The inside of the building is moving along. Again, I said the whole classroom wing in phase 1 is under construction, and we are moving through all the phases, not just structural, but also mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and we're again on schedule. So we're pretty excited that next week the actual cupola structure goes on. So we'll start to see the entire scale of the front facade of the building as we move through this phase. This is a view from the west entrance, the athletic entrance. You can see our new memorial walkway and buses and cars that are going to queue up along this to create a very safe path for kids getting out of cars and kids getting out of buses and heading into the school. This is also an opportunity to recreate the memorial walkway that is affected by some of the new construction. As we get to the back of the building, you can see that not only is the varsity baseball field here, we were able to, through the smaller footprint of the building and some other changes, get the varsity softball field in the same complex area. So those two are now matched up. And as you can see to the left, a lot more parking than on the current site. This is a new entrance, a new facade that was never been on Thomas. This is the east side of the building, and this is what we would probably call the fine arts entrance. And it creates that east-west access through the building, connecting all the parking lots and connecting all the core uses of the building. Moving around a little bit farther over the MAC, looking back at the building, again, you can see how the new construction and the new site amenities merge together. And in a couple of, 4 weeks, we're going to be back to talk about the new natatorium. And again, it's been designed and it's going through cost analysis and those kind of things right now. We'll be back to present it, but it is in the same context of the architecture review board and the architecture. It's a little more simple, but it has some of the same detail and certainly the same brick and articulation elements that the Thomas High School has. Our high school has a couple of big ideas, but the one big idea we already mentioned is that there's this east-west access that goes from the athletic side of the building to the fine arts side of the building through a central rotunda that is sort of the intersection of High and Main Streets. The blue arrow is sort of a continuum of student space. The kind of places that you will learn and thrive. And we understand through a lot of study that kids learn and thrive differently in different kinds of space. So one of the things we're trying to accomplish at both Thomas and the renovation of Kilbourne is a continuum of different kinds of spaces for students to thrive. We start with the formal classroom wing. We come to the center of the building where there is the east-west axis, but then we move through some opportunities above with the media center and some small group breakout spaces through a large student commons that's way more than the historical cafeteria type of space, and then into a very unique and very contained and very safe and secure outdoor commons where students can actually gather and interact in an outdoor setting, but not one that's subject to the open traffic flow of the site. It is a contained space. So this is the beginning of that axis where you come into the entrance of the building from the formal entry. As you get to the first intersection in the building, you've passed through the classroom wing, you see what we're calling Art Alley. It's really a way for daylight to get into all the new spaces of the building. But if you're on the outside of it, it's also a contained safe space, gated off, but for students to access from art rooms, from the drama areas, from the tech areas. And it brings daylight in functionally, but it also gives students another outdoor access, another space outdoors to function as outdoor workspace. I mentioned that central rotunda. This is the intersection of High and Main Street, and it's forward into the student commons, and above it's forward into the media center. The media center is a pretty unique space. It has a lot of new kinds of breakout spaces. There's a lot of new furniture options that have power and data in them to allow students to work. But the interesting thing at Thomas is it has a beautiful overview of the student commons below and the outdoor student commons through the glass on the north wall. And so this is becoming very cool, very optional, very space where everyone will find their place, because there are different ways to sit, different places to be, up, down, very open, very private. And we're hoping to accomplish some of those things. We have worked on improving the finishes since our first presentation, which is this slide. We've reduced some of the intensity of the color. We've brightened some of the finishes. So we want this to be very open, airy, feel very much daylit in terms of the space. On the left there, you can see what is really the media center in a form of that curtain wall above the student commons area. And to the left is the entry into the auditorium. And so the entire student commons area becomes a pre-function space for our new auditorium. And then here is a vertical connection that will get us up to the media center level from this lower level. And then very exciting, something that's always been at Thomas but never been fully developed and never been completely secure, is an outdoor commons area. And so we're looking for, again, places for, in good weather, students have the opportunity to get outside, to get closer to some greenery and some landscaping design, and have all kinds of different seating options, again, that serve and access, the Thrive characteristics of different students. And so we're really excited about this. In fact, so excited that we did it at Thomas, that we're working on doing the same thing in a very interesting bridge over the ravine at Kilbourne. So the Thomas project is complete and from a design stage. We're still tweaking little decisions as we go. We're still understanding, getting feedback from staff and the district leadership in terms of our final decisions. But we are in the chute, and this is going forward. And I thought it might be a little useful just to bring back from our earliest presentation. In November of 21, we had some breakout sessions with students and staff and district leadership about what the aspirational design goals for this project would be. The very first one that came out was this idea that students are different, they learn differently, they thrive differently, and we wanted to make sure we were personalizing a lot of options for student experience. We wanted to be very sustainable, and I made the mistake in the original presentation that we weren't going after LEED certification, but in fact we are, and we have silver LEED point credentials already in our pocket and working on increasing that. We talked about the site and retaining the existing asset value to the greatest degree possible. I think, have done that. We've improved some additional assets, but we didn't have to lose a lot of the existing assets to do it. A lot of what was a great investment in the Thomas site is still there. We definitely had a complex site. We wanted to improve both traffic safety and building life safety. So the ways that the paths of travel to exiting the building, the paths of travels in special lockdown situations, and the way that traffic moves around on the site was a priority in terms of how we came up with this design. And then the final thing, which is probably the most important thing to students and teachers, is that we would accommodate those continuing operations through the phasing ideas that we came up with. And so I think it's very important that this life in Thomas High School for this year and the next year are considered just as good as life in Thomas always was and always will be. So that's a really important piece of a successful project.